to sell a home in Olmos Park, one of the most important conversations you can have long before the photographer arrives is the conversation about staging. Because staging in this market is not about decorating, it's not about following trends, and it's not about copying what you saw on a design show. It's about presenting your home in a way that helps buyers immediately understand what makes it special. And Olmos Park homes are unusually special. So the way you present yours matters more than you might think. And that what we want to do today is walk you through that. We spend a lot of time helping homeowners in Olmos Park, Alamo Heights, Terrell Hills, and Monte Vista prepare their homes for sale. And the one thing we frequently see is that two homes on the same street in similar condition can land very differently in a buyer's mind, almost entirely based on how they were staged. So this video is really for the Olmos Park homeowner who is thinking about selling in the next 6 months, year, even 3 to 5 years from now, because staging is one of those areas where a little planning ahead can change the entire feel of the launch. And we're going to keep this practical, conversational, and grounded in what we actually see in the neighborhood, with no fluff and no hype, really just advice we would share with a friend over coffee. So let's start with a quick framing, because before we get into specific tips, it helps to understand what staging is actually trying to accomplish. And the simplest way we can describe this is staging is the art of helping a buyer emotionally move into a home before they've ever signed a contract. It's the bridge between what the seller sees, which is years of memory and personal style, and what the buyer needs to see, which is the possibility of their own life unfolding in the space. And in Olmos Park specifically, where so many homes have distinctive architectural, period details, and historic character, staging has an additional job, which is to help the architecture do the talking instead of getting buried under personal belongings. So with that in mind, let's go into the 6 steps, starting with number 1, the architectural lead, because Olmos Park homes are often built around features that are generally rare in this market. Things like arched doorways, hand-troweled plaster walls, original tile work, exposed beams, casement windows, decorative ironwork, built-ins from another era, and stone or stucco exteriors that simply do not exist in newer construction. And one of the most common staging mistakes we see is when a homeowner unintentionally hides or competes with those features instead of highlighting them. So the question we hear all the time is, should we paint the original wood trim? Our general guidance is to be very careful before painting anything that contributes to the home's original character, because once it's painted, it's very difficult to undo. And many buyers in Olmos Park are specifically drawn to the architectural integrity of these homes. So the more you can keep that integrity visible, the more your home will resonate with the right buyer. And practically speaking, letting the architecture lead means choosing wall colors that complement rather than fight the home's period, keeping the decorative trim and details visible, arranging furniture so that arched openings, fireplaces, and original built-ins remain the focal points, and resisting the temptation to layer modern design elements so heavily that the home starts to feel like a renovation rather than a restoration, which leads us to number 2. Edit before you decorate, because one thing sellers often underestimate is how much editing alone can transform a home. And we mean editing in the literal sense, removing items, simplifying surfaces, and creating breathing room. And the reason this matters in Olmos Park is that these homes were typically designed with very intentional room sizes and proportions. And when those rooms become too full, even if it's beautiful furniture, the home starts to feel smaller than it actually is. So before any new pillow or vase or accent piece enters the home, we encourage sellers to walk through every room and ask one simple question for each item. Does this help a buyer see the home, or does it distract from the home? And if the honest answer is distract, the item should be packed away, stored, or relocated. And a general rule of thumb is remove roughly a third of what you currently have, including furniture, decorative objects, books, personal photos, kitchen appliances on the countertops, bathroom products, and anything that's accumulated in the corners over time. And here's the part that many people miss. The goal is not for the house to feel empty. The goal is for the home to feel intentional. And there's a real difference between the two. An intentional room has clear focal points. It has clear flow and just enough furniture to communicate the room's purpose. And that brings us naturally to number 3. stage rooms to their original purpose because Olmos Park homes were typically designed with a specific room function in mind. And over the years, many sellers have adapted those rooms to fit their own lifestyles, which is great. It's perfectly normal. But a common situation is that a seller who's turned a formal dining room into a home office, a workout area, a craft station all at once. And while may have worked beautifully for them, it makes it harder for a buyer to recognize what the room was designed to do. So when we sit down with sellers, we often talk about gently returning the rooms to an original version of themselves so that any buyer can read what it is at a glance. The dining room needs to read as a dining room. Living room needs to read as a living room. Primary bedroom reads as a primary bedroom. And any flex space is staged in a way that suggests one clear purpose rather than three competing ones. Because a room that tries to be three things at once usually reads as a room that is none of those things. And a practical implication of this is buyers tend to value square footage more when they can clearly see what each space is used for, which can shape their perception of how livable the home actually is. And one thing we want to add here is that staging may help buyers understand the layout, scale and functionality, lifestyle, potential, room purpose, all of those things in an older home. And really, those rooms feel much different than a new construction. And that clarity often is the bridge between a buyer feeling uncertain and a buyer feeling at home, which leads us to number 4. Pay close attention to the lighting. Lighting is one of the most underestimated tools in any staging plan. And in Olmos Park, it can be transformational since so many of these homes were built before modern lighting standards and the existing fixtures may be original, dated, dim, or simply not designed for the way we use rooms today. So we encourage sellers to walk through their home at 3 different times of day, early morning, midday, and evening, and pay attention to which rooms feel dim, which rooms feel inviting, which feel cold, which feel warm. And from there, we look at 3 layers of light: the natural light coming in through the windows, the ambient light from the ceiling fixture, and task or accent lighting from lamps and sconces. And we make sure every room has all 3 working together because a single overhead light in a large room is really almost never enough. An underlit room will photograph poorly and it's going to feel smaller in person. So practical lighting moves really often include like replacing burned out light bulbs, yellow bulbs with bright ones, consistently swapping out any dated fixtures so to make the home feel current, but still respect the time period of the home. We also like adding lamps in areas that tend to fall into shadows and opening up the windows. And we love cleaning the windows because clean windows can make a remarkable difference in how bright and cared for a home feels. Now, let's say a homeowner is wondering whether to spend money updating fixtures right before listing. Our general guidance is that lighting updates often have an outsized impact relative to their cost because they shape how every photo is taken and how every showing feels and how the home reads on screen, which is where most buyers will encounter the home for the first time. Which brings us to number 5. Scale the furniture to your rooms. Because furniture scale is one of the most common staging issues we see in older homes, and in Olmos Park, it's really no exception. Since the proportions of the rooms were built, so the houses were built in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, and those proportions can be different than in newer construction. Sometimes rooms are smaller than you would expect, sometimes the ceilings are higher than you would expect, and sometimes door and window placement limit where the furniture can go. So when sellers bring in oversized modern sofas, large sectionals, or heavy bedroom sets into a room that was designed for different proportions, the rooms can feel cramped, awkward, unbalanced, and the home can lose its sense of openness. And really, buyers are looking for that openness. So a common scenario is a seller has a beautiful large sectional that they love, but in the context of the home's original living room, it dominates the space and makes the room feel like it cannot hold anything else. And the questions becomes, do we want the buyer to remember the sofa or the room? And the answer is always the room. So we will often work with sellers to rearrange, store, temporarily replace pieces that are working against the architecture. And that does not necessarily mean hiring a full staging company, although many Olmos Park homes, that's what we actually do recommend, especially at the higher price points. But it really can also mean just editing what you already have, repositioning furniture to open up sight lines, pulling pieces away from walls when appropriate, and creating clear pathways through every room so the home flows naturally during showings. And the financial implication here is real because buyers often respond to how a home feels when they walk through it. A home that feels balanced, well proportioned, tends to make a stronger first impression than a home that feels crowded or out of scale. Which leads us to number 6, style your outdoor and transition spaces, because Olmos Park is a neighborhood where the outdoor experiences matter. From the mature oak trees, there's stone walls, there's porches, patios, courtyards, garden spaces that really in so many of the houses there. And one thing we frequently see is that sellers focus all of their staging energy on the interior and forget that buyers are forming an opinion about the home long before they reach the front door. And they continue forming that opinion long after they leave the back patio. So transition spaces are some of the most valuable areas to stage thoughtfully, starting with the front porch, the front door, and the entry. Because really at the moment of arrival, like it's so important. We like to recommend a fresh layer of paint on the front door, a new doormat, a healthy plant or two near the entry, clean glass, polished hardware, and a working front porch light. That can completely change the emotional experience of walking into the home. Then on the back side of the house, we encourage sellers to look at outdoor living spaces with that same care, whether that is a patio, a small courtyard, a balcony, a garden, because in our climate, outdoor living is now part of how people live. And showing a buyer that what they could do in a home like yours is incredibly powerful. So practical moves we often suggest include power washing patios and walkways, adding a simple outdoor dining setup or seating area when it's appropriate, refreshing the landscape. Ding, 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 big one near the home. We love that. Trimming overgrown vegetation, making sure any pool, fountain, or water feature is clean, clear, and inviting. And for Olmos Park homes specifically, where so many properties have mature trees, beautiful stonework, and unique outdoor character, these exterior moments often become some of the most memorable images in the buyer's experience of the home. Now let's spend a few minutes on some of the things we frequently get asked from Olmos Park homeowners about staging, because these come up in nearly every listing conversation. The first one is, do we really need to hire a professional stager? And the honest answer is, well, it depends on the home, the price point, the current state of the furnishings. But in higher end Olmos Park homes, professional staging is often worth considering because a visual difference can be meaningful and the cost of staging is usually small compared to the cost of a price reduction down the road. And really, although every home is different, the right answer for one seller may not be the right answer for another. We typically really like getting a stager in there. And the second question is, can we just stage with our own furniture? And the answer is sometimes yes, sometimes partially, and sometimes no. Because if your furniture is well scaled, well cared for, and complements the architecture, you may simply need editing and rearranging. But if your pieces are oversized, pretty personalized, or competing with the home's character, a hybrid approach or full staging plan may make more sense and actually make you more money. The third question we often hear is, when should the staging happen? And our general guidance is that staging should be complete before professional photography, before any video or aerial work, because really before broker previews, and definitely before the first showing, because every one of those moments is shaping how the home is perceived, and you only get one chance to make a first impression in each of them. And the fourth question is, what about scent and ambiance? And while we always want to be careful here because strong scents can be off-putting to some buyers, the general principle is that a home should feel fresh and clean, neutral, with windows open periodically, surfaces dusted, fabrics aired out, and any pet-related odors fully addressed. That's important because buyers walking through a home are taking in much more than the visual information. And the fifth question we get asked is, how do we handle like our personal family photos, meaningful artwork? And the honor answer is that most of that should be carefully packed away before the home is photographed. Not because those items are not meaningful, but because they make it harder for a buyer to see themselves in that space. And the goal of staging is to make the home feel universal enough for the right buyer to walk in and feel like it is theirs. And the sixth question we hear is, what is the single biggest staging mistake sellers make in Olmos Park? And if I had to pick one, it would probably be doing too much rather than too little, because in homes with strong architecture, the most effective staging is usually the staging that gets out of the way and lets the home speak. So as we bring this together, let's recap the 6 staging tips to focus on before listing your Olmos Park home. Number 1, let the architecture lead. Present the home in a way that highlights rather than competes with its original features. Number two, edit before you decorate. Remove roughly a third of what you have so the home feels intentional. That includes clothing rather than full. Number three, stage rooms to their original purpose. So every space reads clearly to a buyer at a glance. Number four, pay close attention to the lighting, layering natural, ambient, and task lighting so the home feels bright, warm, and photo, photo, photograph worthy. And remember, number six, style your outdoor and transition spaces, because in Olmos Park, the experience of arriving at and moving through the home is part of what buyers fall in love with. And the one thing we want to leave you with is that staging an Olmos Park home well does not have to be expensive or overwhelming. It just rewards homeowners who think ahead, ask good questions, and surround themselves with people who know this market and homes well. So whether you are a year away, 3 years away, 5 years away from selling, the choices you start making now will shape the launch you have later. And we would be honored to be part of those conversations whenever you're ready, because helping homeowners think through how to present their home is one of the most meaningful parts of what we do. And we approach every home as it deserves its own launch plan, because in Olmos Park, it absolutely does. So if any of this resonated with you, if you have questions about your specific home, your timeline, or your goals, give us a call. I'm Caroline Decherd with the Park Properties Group at the Phyllis Browning Company. I'm here to help. Give us a ring. Have a great day. Thank you.